RC from the Montage Joiner Shop here. After spending 5 or 6 years thinking about building one of these, after being awake at 3 a.m. in the morning designing it in my head, after working on it for about a year and a half, albeit part-time, after having it empty my business coffers, after having it precipitate a minor midlife crisis, I can finally point to this desk and say it is done, it is finished, it is ready to go. And there's a lot going on here, so that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to give you a tour of my signature Bargueño desk. I'm going to show you that it has some hidden compartments. I'm going to show you that it can do a few little party tricks. I'm going to show you that it has mechanical contrivances. So there's a lot to cover here. Let's go take a closer look at the signature Bargueño desk. So here it is. Here's my signature Bargueño desk in its completed form. And as you may have gathered from the intro, I'm pretty excited about it. In fact, I think this just might call for a montage, yeah? Let's do it. So before I get into the nitty-gritty details of this particular piece, let me back up a little bit and explain some things. If you watched my previous videos about this piece when it was in progress, you'll know that the Bargueño desk is a predominantly Spanish furniture form of the Renaissance era. It's basically a chest on a stand with a fall front, and that stand is, in most examples, a trestle base, meaning that it has sled feet, a multitude of legs, and stretchers under there. There are examples of a cabinet base as well, but most of them have the trestle base, what is known as a pied de puente. And I preferred the trestle base for my design for a number of reasons. One is the visual appeal of everything that's going on under there, but also there's a practical aspect. There's room for my feet to fit underneath, and there's room for me to do something that's very much not of tradition, which is to incorporate a seat into the design that slides under the trestle base. And there is at least one aspect of the cabinet base included here, in that I have a case here with some drawers in it, whereas most pied de puente are solely a stand and there's no drawers in the stand itself. And all this will hopefully make sense in a moment. So the first order of business will be to pull out the seat here. So it's integrated into the front of the piece such that the back of the seat actually fits underneath the center drawer front here. And it itself acts like a drawer. I just give it a little bit of a tug here, like that. The seat is obviously of a very unusual design. It incorporates some heavy-duty drawer slides. I believe these are rated for about 200, 220 pounds, which is more than enough for my weight. Those drawer slides are attached to a steel linkage, which itself is attached to an oak kind of carrier, sled carrier, that fits into a steel welded framework that's bolted up underneath the bottom of my case on the trestle base. And you'll notice that the seat itself has a kind of a triangular shape. That's for a number of reasons, one of which is that it plays well with the drawer slides, but also I'm a drummer, and I have a drum throne at my drum set that is similar in shape with that kind of triangular bicycle style seat. I find it very comfortable to sit on, and I find that it encourages good posture. So I went with that here, and of course I upholstered the seat as well to provide a little bit of cushioning. So the seat essentially only has 2 legs, and the third leg is the desk itself. And yeah, so I just pulled it out like that. I have myself a seat. By the way, while I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'd like to thank some people that helped me with this project. At Accuride, they typically only sell these drawer slides in bulk. And I wanted these black ones, and they weren't normally available in singles, but Accuride helped me procure a single pair for this particular project, and I want to say thanks to them. So Accuride slides are the guys who helped me out with that. And then this steel frame that I have welded together and bolted to the bottom of the case is made for me by Jeff Leftwich at Jeff Leftwich Furniture. And you can find him at Instagram at jleftwich Furniture, I believe. So check him out. Give him a follow if you're so inclined. He volunteered his welding skills to help me out with that part of the project. And then the rest was up to me. Also, while I'm sitting here, I figured I would show you what the door is like, at least on the exterior. So my fall front is a frame and panel door. The panel is veneered with amate bark paper. Amate bark paper is handmade bark paper, well, it's bark from the amate tree, I guess. That's made by the Otomi peoples in Mexico. They're an indigenous tribe that's been making this paper the same way for centuries, if not millennia. And I really like the yin and yang that gives this piece, because if you recall, this is a predominantly Spanish furniture form of the Renaissance era. And you'll also recall, if you're a student of history, that back in the day, the Spanish and the indigenous peoples of Central and South America had quite the coming together. So I really like that the amate bark paper is included here, and I've worked with it in the past and I really liked it. So the panel is veneered with that, as are all of the drawer bottoms in this piece. And of course, right up front and center is this big copper medallion style here that is held to the door with these sapele brackets that I hand shaped and bolted on. So I can unscrew these brackets and take this off if I need to, if this gets damaged, or I just decide I want to put a different copper medallion in there, I can do that. The frame is trimmed out with some thin sapele all around these edges. And another thing you'll notice about the front of this case is that the outer legs have a little bit of a splay to the inside of the legs. That angle is carried through these outer drawer fronts. They don't look like it, but these are actually drawer fronts. They're kind of incognito, but they're there. That same angle is carried through to the stiles on the door, all the way through the top of the piece. So that those angles carry all the way through and give the piece kind of a nice, wide, stable stance to it that I really like. So that's one feature that's going on there. You also notice that the grain on these drawer fronts is a double cathedral grain pointing right towards the center pole. And I have a big wide drawer right here that is bottomed with amate bark paper and lined at the top with English bridal leather, which will make sense in a moment. But there's lots of room for spillover here. Obviously, this is something I'm going to want to access a lot when I have the front down, but I figured I have the space, I may as well use it. As far as opening the desk is concerned, I didn't want to use like a mortise lock with a key. I was concerned I might lose the key. That said, I did want it to be something that's not obvious how to get into. I have a young child. Don't really want to mess around in here because this is where I kind of do my business. So I made it something of a puzzle lock. So there's a rocker arm on top of here. And you'll see that it doesn't really lift out of the way. So you have to kind of figure that out. So I have these incognito drawers over here that you need to pull out before this will open, because I want the fall front to land on some supports when I open it. If I haven't done that first, then it could potentially kind of fall down and damage the hinges here. So I wanted to make it such that the latch requires the supports to be opened before you drop the door. So what you do instead of lifting the latch is to compress it down, and it's just a spring-loaded latch, and out come the supports, just like that. When I let go of the latch, it lifts enough that I can pull the door open, just like that. And there we are. So the fall front lands on top of these side drawers that are lined at the top with the English bridal leather to give it a little bit of a softer landing. And not wanting to waste the space that's in these drawers, I made the drawers sideways, because if they were facing up like a drawer typically would, they're facing right into the bottom of my work surface. That's not very practical. So what I did is I made them sideways, and not wanting to waste that sideways space, I put pivoting drawers in here. So I have a pivoting drawer here with a cup holder, and there's an English bridal leather coaster kind of incorporated into the bottom of that side. And then on the other side, I have another one that's just kind of open that I can drop my cell phone into and kind of keep that out of my desk area, right where I can look at it and kind of see what's going on and not having it clutter up the desk. Of course, these are all hand dovetailed, and just stick out like that. So at this point, I think it makes sense to bring the camera in a little closer so you can see the gallery and the work surface, and we'll take it from there. So here's my work surface, and you'll see that I have it veneered with contrasting woods. These are all shop cut veneers. I've cut a little bit on the thick side as I work mostly with hand tools, so that it's a little bit more practical to work with that way. And you'll see that the center panel here is some quarter sawn sapele. That quarter sawn sapele is bordered by this curly ambrosia maple, which I really like the kind of the irregularities in. That is itself bordered by this thin soft maple in a little bit lighter color. And then at the corners I have more sapele, little squares that are accented with some copper plugs that are infilled with sapele end grain. And at the front of the work surface I have a little bit of a bevel plane in here that's got a little bit of a curve to it. That's just to make it a little bit easier on the forearms when I'm typing, but also to clear the hinge barrel for the door that's at the top of the gallery here, which you'll see in a moment. All right, so I've set up the camera over my shoulder here, and hopefully I don't dip in front of it too much with my shoulder. And I've zeroed in on the gallery so you can see what's going on. And I think I'll just start from the top and work my way down. So this panel right here up front on the top in the middle is a lift-up door. And I intend to keep a speaker behind here. So like a center channel style speaker or a sound bar. So I'm editing video, I have the sound right in front of my ears. As such, the backing on this is fabric to let the sound through. And these fins just kind of support the fabric and add a little bit of decorative value as well. And I made little cutouts in them to create this kind of curve. At the top here, I have some sapele bullnose molding that matches the diameter of the hinge barrels. Right below that, I have some English bridle leather that is projecting out from the face of the door just a little bit to give the full front door a place to land. I have it trimmed out with bits of sapele, like I have sapele across the bottom here to cover up the joinery, some ebonized walnut trim there. And in between each of these fins, to space them out, I put in some sapele, and I had to cut each of those tiny little pieces out and trim them to fit to get the spacing how I wanted. And this center style extends below the frame of the door to create a finger pole, and I hand shaped this finger pole, and that's decorated with some copper plugs that are infilled with walnut end grain and sapele end grain, and those are graduated in size to kind of create a down pointing arrow here. And I really like how that turned out. That was pretty tedious to do all this little intricate work, but I really like how it turned out in the end. On either side of that, I have these doors. Now, I didn't want to do doors that had hinges on them because I thought the inside of the case might get in the way of that. And I didn't think it made sense to put drawers up there either because they're so high you wouldn't really be able to see into them very well. So what I ended up doing is putting some removable door panels here. So these just pop out like this. I just grab onto these little ebonized walnut handles. And behind them I have some magnets that correspond with magnets that are in the dividers. And the tops of the doors have little dowel pins that correspond with holes that are drilled on the inside of the case. Just like that. And there's quite a bit of room in there. I intend to keep a scanner in one side and maybe some camera equipment in the other. Not sure yet, but there's a lot of room in there. So, and those just pop into place just like that. Below here I have this thin strip here that looks like it's decorative, but these are actually all doors and drawers. And they start pretty far back and kind of project more out as you get to the center. And there's a repeating theme of these circular recesses backed by copper. And here I have some pivoting drawers. Just pop out like this. And these drawers are quite shallow. They're intended to keep things like writing utensils and, memory cards and things like that. The bottoms are quarter sawn sapele that are arranged in a sunburst pattern radiating out from the pivot points, as are the dividers that are made of curly ambrosia maple. In between each of those dividers I have some sapele fronting them that has a cutout in them that's kind of like a keyhole shape or a horseshoe arch. And those just go like that. And they project out below the divider enough to give you a handhold to grab onto those. This center area here, I didn't want to waste that space. And so I made this not just a decorative thing, but a drawer as well. So if I lift up the door, I can give this a pull, and there's a big drawer in there. And it's quite shallow and long and narrow, so I figured I might keep some business receipts in here. And that's got a Amati Bart paper veneered bottom on it with some contrasting cherry kind of cove molding around the edges. and that's decorated with some bits of sapele in the corners. And this just slides in here like this. And in between these two circular recesses, I removed the material such that the finger pull on the lift-up door fits right in there. And I cut out the sides of the finger pull to match the diameter of those recesses, so it all just fits together like that. I really like how those play with each other. Moving over here to the right side, I have these mail slots here. And I've always liked the look of that in desk galleries that I've looked at, all the little cubbies and drawers and things like that. And so I did that here, and these dividers are shaped such that they are not only decorative, but kind of facilitate having mail stuffed into them. And because these mail slots don't need to be as deep as the case itself is, that afforded me the opportunity to add a hidden compartment. So underneath this middle gap here, I have a little finger pull. There's a little recess, and this whole thing pulls out. And in here I have a dovetailed box that has another dovetailed box kind of sitting on the back of it, kind of piggybacked there. And that just lifts off, so it's removable like that. Little hand dovetailed box with some English bridal leather discs decorating it. And I don't know what I'm going to put in there. I don't really have anything that requires being hidden away, but I've always wanted a desk that had hidden compartments, and now I do. And this just mounts to some dowels that are in the bottom here. So the bottom projects past the back of the box and gives a place for this to register. And that kind of allows it to piggyback with the rest of the case when I draw it in and out, and that just fits in there like that and disappears. And this is decorated with some sapele that has little arches in it to accent the openings, as do the copper plugs here that are infilled with sapele end grain, and those are set into a ebonized walnut kind of bullnose molding right there to accent it. So that was pretty fun too. Below my mail slots I have these drawers, and you may recognize these drawers because these figure prominently in a number of my YouTube videos. So I did YouTube videos about how to ebonize walnut, how to do cockbeating, and how I do drawer slips. And I understand this isn't the traditional way to do drawer slips. Normally you wouldn't have your drawer slip across the inside of the drawer front. Instead you just plow a groove in the drawer front and only have your slips on the sides. But I very much prefer the way this looks when you wrap around the drawer slip around the front. For one, I don't have to worry about where the drawer groove is when I cut my dovetails at all. And when it's mitered in like that, it kind of frames in the drawer bottom. And you can see the drawer bottoms here are veneered with a Montage bark paper. And that cream color I think plays well with the soft maple that are used as a secondary wood here. I really like soft maple as a secondary wood. Not only is it light in color for interiors like this, to make it easier to see into things, but it's very hand tool friendly, and I work mostly with hand tools, and it's also pretty inexpensive and available. So really like soft maple as a secondary wood. And in this case I chose to use a contrasting wood for the slips, which is cherry in this case. And these drawers are graduated every which way. So not only are they graduated in height, they're also graduated in projection. So the bottom one's out the furthest and the top one's in the furthest. The cock beating is graduated in thickness. So this is 1/8 inch cock beating, 3/16 and 1/4 inch cock beating. The drawer pulls, which are all hand done, are graduated in size, as are the circular recesses behind them, both in diameter and in depth. So the largest recess is the deepest, and the smallest recess is the shallowest. So that's graduated every which way, and I really like the effect that that gives. Moving to what is easily the largest portion of the desk gallery is these timbre doors in the middle here. And these are made from quarter sawn cherry, so they have nice ray flux visible all through there. Inside of that I have some quarter sawn sapele for contrast, and I have hand-shaped curly ambrosia maple little poles here. Inside of that I have some bullnose, or maybe you'd call it ebonized walnut beading, to give a little black accent to the middle of the door here. And these just open like this. And inside there I have it all lined with a Montage bark paper to keep things nice and light inside there. In the back is a hand-shaped sapele cord port where the grain kind of lifts and then drops again right where the hole is. and I intend to keep a computer monitor in here. So either I'll just keep it behind the doors and open it to view it, or I can lift the monitor out of there and put it on the desk surface, and then put it away when I'm done and close this up and make it go away. And the groove at the top here is a little stop that ensures that the doors meet in the middle there. And the shelf that kind of supports the doors is decorated with some sapele trim and some curly maple. And that's above a big slot here that I intend to keep my keyboard and other little peripherals in. And there's cord ports at the back corners on the left and right side there. Bracketing that, I have all this trim. This is cherry trim with some triple beading on it. I did with a scratch stock. I have trim projecting this way. I have trim projecting this way. And at a 45, I have some curly maple trim that's kind of shaped to match what's adjacent to it. And that creates a nice visual effect that brackets in the timbre doors. And last of all, I have this over here. This is a drawer. This is the most non-traditional drawer I think I've ever made. Very little about it. It's traditional. For one, it doesn't have a drawer pull, not a standard one. Instead, what I did was this big decorative thing that doubles as a drawer pull. So the drawer face is quarter sawn cherry again, and there's lots of ray flex visible there. All these sapele pieces here are cut such that they have a curve to them, and the grain pattern curves to point towards the kind of center point of this curve. This cherry panel here has all these fingers that interlace with the sapele, and this is actually a pivot point. This just pulls out like that, and that is my drawer pull. And out comes the drawer, and this is where I intend to keep things like 8.5 by 11 paper. It's folded in half. There's two tiers here, an upper and a lower one. The lower one, of course, is in the front, and that's bordered by this fancy trim here. So I have some cutouts carved into the cherry. Above that, I have these horseshoe arches. And those are kind of a tip of the hat to Carlo Bugatti, who was a big inspiration for this project. And he made liberal use of horseshoe arches in these kind of repetitive themes in his designs. So this is kind of like, hey, this is kind of where that came from. Each of these kind of capitals in between the horseshoe arches are lined with little bits of sapele that are like a beading. And they have little copper columns along there as well. And this is another area where I have a hidden compartment. So the floor of this upper tier has a finger hole in it, and the bottom just lifts out. Let me pull out the drawer so you can see inside of here. So inside here you can see I have a lot of room. And again, I don't know what I'm going to put in there. Nothing too secret, I don't think, but it's extra storage that I can use for whatever. And you'll notice that this drawer side is not solid. It's actually a frame and panel. If you're standing on the other side of this, when I open it, you'll see this little picture emerge. The panel is veneered with a Monterey bark paper. And on that Monterey bark paper, I use some black milk paint to make a leaf impression. And that's all framed in with some thin sapele trim that's mitered at the corners, and that's bracketed in by some curly maple inlay. So that's what's going on at the back of the drawer there. So I'm just going to put my bottom back in, like this. It's a tight fit. It's quarter sawn sapele, so it shouldn't move so much that it, gets stuck in there or anything. And away that goes. So that is my desk gallery. And then when I want to wrap it all up and put everything away, I just close my pivoting drawers. That's my fall front, pull down the latch, put away my supporting drawers, let go of the latch, and that buttons all that up. And then I'll just slide the seat back underneath. It fits underneath the bottom of this drawer front right here, nice and flush to the front of the case. And everything is put away, is covered up. I don't have to look at it anymore. My current desk is just a big table that has stuff all over it. It's an ugly mess. So this will be a big improvement over that situation. To conclude this tour, I thought I might walk around with the camera a little bit and show you some things about the case here. So the edges of the case, or the corner joinery, is hand-cut miter corner dovetails. It would be nice to cut these big case dovetails with some sort of machine, but I don't have said machine, so I do it by hand. And I really like the way the mitered corners dress up the front of the case, which is plainly exposed here. The door is an inset door. And then in between the door and the case, I have some sapele trim that kind of highlights that opening. And then on the side here, I have these chest lifts. Let me get to where you can see that a little bit better. I played around with different blacksmith made like bail pull style handles. and did not care for any of them, in part because I couldn't afford a good blacksmith. So they were all pretty cheap, and I didn't really trust them even to have the strength to handle the weight of this case. So I made these chest lifts out of the same materials as the rest of the piece. Ebonized walnut and some sapele in the middle with some cherry, and then there's a copper plug there that's infilled with some sapele end grain. And those guys are both glued and screwed to the case, and they're extra strong. So when I do remove the case from the base, I'll be able to carry them with these, and of course they add some decorative value as well. The lower case is dovetailed as well, although I don't think the corners are mitered. Yeah, actually they are. Okay, never mind. So those are mitered corner dovetails as well. The leg profile at the bottom here is the same leg profile I've used for my signature pieces for years now. You'll see that same theme repeated on my tool chest base. In fact, that tool chest base was really a practice run for the base for this Bargueño desk. You can see it has a very similar style with 6 legs, 2 sled feet, and the stretchers underneath there. So underneath here you can see the stretchers that span the distance between the center pair of legs and the base, and I have an arcing stretcher at the bottom, which is another thing we've used a lot in my signature work. The top of that is lined with a thin piece of sapele, again another little piece of contrast. The stiles, if you want to call them that, are ebonized walnut that's all hand-shaped and fits over that lower stretcher with some bridle joints. At the top, I think they're doweled in to the upper stretcher, and that upper stretcher has these horseshoe arches cut into them. Again, another repeat of that theme. Those horseshoe arches are lined with some English bridle leather, which has a nice kind of red-brown color to it. The edges of that leather is rounded over and burnished and dyed black. I like the contrast that gives. And then above that, I have some more trim. So there's some ebonized walnut beading with some sapele. And on top of that is actually another piece of English bridle leather, treated the same way as what lines the arches. And that gives a soft place for the seat to land if it were ever to come loose, although I built it kind of overbuilt, so that shouldn't be a concern. But if it does, it has a soft place to land. So that is the structure between the sides or the legs of the base. So underneath there, you can see the steel frame that was welded up for me by Jeff Leftwich, and that is bolted to the bottom of the case. And in the back there are some cherry cleats that are similar to like tabletop clips. So if the case expands and contracts a little bit, it won't mess the case up. There's a rigid steel frame there under a wooden case that will move with the seasons or with changes in humidity. So I wanted to allow for that. And basically this linkage right here attaches to a oak carrier that fits inside of this and slides back and forth. And lastly, there is the back of the case, which is shiplap cherry. That's about 1 centimeter, maybe 12 mil thick. That is held in place with these little Robertson head cabinet screws in black, of course. That is such that I can remove the back, which is very much necessary because the upper case is screwed to the bottom case, and those screws are hidden behind there. Up front, they're underneath the hinge leaves for the drop front. So to remove this case from the base, which is also shiplapped, I need to take the back off and the front off, and then I can access those screws and lift the whole upper case off of there for the sake of moving it. So you can move the whole piece of furniture by taking the seat off and just moving the base and top together, or you can move the top and base separately by taking the front and back off and removing the screws that attach it to each other. So you can see there's cord ports all over the place, not only for the cords, but also to give ventilation to the electronics that might be held within. And you can see a little bit of the mechanism here for the rocker arm. So there is a tab that comes up through the middle here, right there, inside the case, and fits up inside this mortise, which I have actually left exposed. Holding that tab in place is just this little pin here, and that passes through, and that pin is removable. Again, I wanted everything here to be removable. This rocker arm is just some shaped cherry, and on either side of it is some quartersawn sapele, which is what houses the fulcrum of this rocker arm, which is just an oak pin. And those sapele plates are just screwed to the top of the case from the inside. So everything is removable repairable, tweakable, you name it. And I think I might take the back off of this right now, actually, so you can see the rocker arm mechanism. So there I have all my backboards removed and set aside, and of course those are numbered from left to right, so I know which one goes where when I go to put them back. And here are the ugly innards to the desk, and here you can see the rocker arm mechanism here. So there's a tab that goes through the rocker arm. Down here, this is screwed to this crossbar. Those screws, again, help make it such that things are removable and repairable and tweakable. And those go out to the sides, both sides, because remember I have two supporting drawers. And those tabs go down through both cases, and the supporting drawers are behind those corners. Basically, they have a little recess in the top back of each of those supporting drawers that this tab here fits into. And of course, when I depress the locker arm at the front, that lifts this whole mechanism. Let's see if I can do this. Just like that. And releases those drawers. So I hope that all makes sense. And then you can also see that there's some screws for the timbre doors. Again, everything is removable, replaceable, tweakable, fixable, all those little things. So that's what's going on in there. Well, I think that concludes my tour of my signature Bargueño desk. I think I covered everything. That said, if you have a question, feel free to leave that in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it. And I hope you also got a sense for how much time and effort and thought went into building this thing. Designing and building on the fly is a bit of a trip. On the one hand, there's a lot of stress and tension that comes with that. There's a lot of lost sleep, designing stuff in your head. But at the same time, there's a sense of adventure that comes with it. I don't really know what I'm going to get into when I walk in here on a given day. And that really only adds to the sense of accomplishment and fulfillment when you walk out of here at the end of the day, having brought something physical into the world that's a manifestation of all that thought and effort and creative exercise. So I hope that makes sense. So I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. Now, if you like what you saw here, please hit like and subscribe. It would help me out a lot. Also hit the little bell icon if you want to be notified anytime I release a new video. And if you didn't like what you saw here, keep it to yourself, pal. Or watch one of my other videos. You might like one of those. Thank you for watching.